Hello, welcome to this episode of Parts of the Arts with me, your host, Rebecca Godden. Today on the pod, we have a couple who both work within different parts of the industry. We've got Natasha and Tom Gruenke Callaghan. Natasha is a drama teacher, scriptwriter, puppeteer and maker. She's worn many hats within the world of the arts. A graduate of the University of Winchester, where we're filming today, with a degree in comedy performance and production. She found herself in the world of secondary school teaching, which is remarkably similar to stand-up. Similarities include being regularly heckled, half of the audience don't want to be there, and most of them are struggling with their emotional regulation. But hey, at least it's a guaranteed and captive audience. Those are the words of Tasha. You can tell that she is comedy trained, and she's going to be a brilliant guest today, alongside her husband, Tom, who has worked across all departments of backstage theatre, but most commonly is lighting and stage management. He found that he participated in youth theatre as a child and realised performing wasn't his strongest suit, and that he got the same excitement from being under the lights as being in control of the lights. So he graduated from this university in a degree in theatre production, arts and stage management. He's toured nationally. He works freelance as a technician across many venues in Hampshire, the Mayflower Theatre, the Theatre Royal being them as well. And he's been part of a team delivering over 250 shows a year in medium-sized receiving houses, where the programme varies from circus, comedy, dance, drama, and everything in between. He also has worked at the University of Winchester, came back as a programme leader for their theatre production degree, teaching the next generation of backstage workers and helping deliver final year productions in musical theatre and acting degrees. This couple are going to be so fun to talk to today. They've got a wealth of experience across both areas of theatre, so please enjoy. Hello, Tasha and Tom. Hello. And welcome to Part of the Arts.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for being here in what is kind of a bit of a home from home for all of us.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time here.
Yeah, so for context, we're at the University of Winchester in one of their sound recording studios, and myself and Tash went to university here.
As did I.
As did Tom. Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
Because you work here and worked here. I
came back for round 2.
Well, couldn't leave, and now you're back for this, so they just could not get rid of you. Back in our little home from home, which is great. Now, I know I've asked you to think of a few things before the pod today, and one of those things is in the industry, as actors, as artists, just within the world we're in, we often say things that maybe should have stayed in our heads, that we might just off the cuff just say or do without maybe thinking it through. So I did ask you guys to have a little think about something you said this week, or the last thing that you said that you thought, that really should have stayed in my head. So Tasha, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, I was trying to think about it, and I think being a teacher means that I've had to sort of try to work really hard on not doing that. so the way I've done that is by also teaching the kids how to not say things that they shouldn't out loud. So I enjoy it when a child says something that they shouldn't have, whatever, stupid comment, silly noise, and the class might laugh, and then I just wait for that silence, and I look at them and I go, wow, that was such an interesting thing to choose to say out loud. Anyway.
Wow. And do they respond to that?
Oh, yeah. That kid will be, for the rest of the lesson, I'm like, yep. And everybody needs just a little bit of shame. Just a little bit of shame.
A little bit, and just a little bit of sarcasm in there.
And it's usually Year 8 boys.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that who have worked in theatre and education in some setting.
Yes.
Great, that's a good one. Love that. Thank you. Tom, what was the last thing you said?
Mine's really similar. I think I suffered a couple of embarrassing moments really early in my career where I'd ask, why have we done it like that for this show? Or why was that the costume that you chose? And then I couldn't think of a good enough reason and would just end up sort of trailing off and going, but I thought it was a bit...
Oh, no.
naff. And so I've trained myself as way into a way of just going, oh, well, that's a choice. And it's a lovely choice. But there's that note where I can go, Yeah, it's a choice that I didn't like, though.
It's a choice I wouldn't have made.
No, would definitely never
But good
make
for
that
you.
choice.
But good for you.
So it's working on your positive reinforcement.
Yeah,
let's
I
say.
read something about Noel Coward, who developed saying, "Darling, you've done it again," to people whose work he'd seen that he didn't like. And I thought, that's a really smart way of doing it. Yeah.
That is.
So I made my own little
How cutting.
version.
How
Yes.
cutting.
It is always that thing, though, isn't it? Like, we work in the industry, we make friends in the industry here, like you guys, and when you go and see each other's work, obviously you're not going to like everything. You're not going to love everything. Every single piece of theatre or art is not going to be for you. But it is that thing of, if you go and see someone's new show, for example, and then afterwards they run up to you and go, "So what did you think?" And you're
Of
like,
course, they're so proud of their work.
You're like,
Yeah.
I need to say, again, it's that like,
You were amazing.
Yes.
You were incredible.
you stole the show.
Yeah. I couldn't take my eyes off you.
And you made some choices.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the plot, but you smashed it.
Yeah.
You were amazing. Yeah, and I have actually, well, I'm not proud to admit it, but I have actually left a friend's show in the interval.
What was your excuse? Diarrhea.
No, they didn't know. They didn't know I was there, so I didn't tell them I was coming. And
You fully came as a critic. You were like, if I like it,
Undercover.
I'll say hi. If I hate it, I'm going.
and it was like a friend from the past that I'd reconnected with through work. So it wasn't like, I wouldn't do it to you guys. It wasn't that, but.
Well, I've got a one-man show coming up.
And I just couldn't. I couldn't stay. I was like, it was bad, and I had that choice of, if I stay, I've got to give feedback at the end, and I can't.
No.
That is like that would be a moment.
You're not going to want that. You're not going to want that for you.
That would be a moment where I said everything that should have stayed in my mind.
Ooh.
So yeah, so there we go. I'm sharing already,
Yeah.
already today, which is great. And the next thing I wanted to ask you was, what was the last thing you saw that ignited a spark in you?
Do you want to take this one?
So theatre, TV, film, a podcast, anything, you know.
Part of the arts.
Yeah, part of the arts, obviously.
I've got a little twofold, and
Yeah, you go first.
so I the one that I thought about when you sort of gave us a couple of prompts for this sort of thing was that I just finished working with a theatre production degree here at the University of Winchester, and we had our big third year shows back in May, and I remember there was a moment where the show was up, it was running, the kind of chaos had settled into the rhythm of the show running. And I had a lovely student who, and you know her as well as I do, English is not even her second language, it's her third. It's the culmination of her degree. And I remember looking across, checking, and she was calling the show from the prompt desk. And it was a really, really quick number. And we were doing Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, which is a musical set in Madrid, lots of Latin themes in the music. And it was this super, super fast number. And I just looked over and she was smashing it. Like, I could see the pen was counting the beats, the cues were all happening at the moment. I could see the stage from where I was in the wings and see everything hitting its beats, hitting its placement. And there was a really lovely moment of both satisfaction for job well done, but then the drive, I think, for me comes immediately after that satisfaction.
Yeah.
As soon as I feel really good about what we've achieved, I then go, well, let's get the next one.
Yeah.
And straight back into it. So that was one that I remember I felt immediately sort of as a real spark and a drive for me, even though I sort of was watching someone else's work as they were doing it.
And that's so special, isn't it?
Yeah.
To have that, I think, immediateness. A lot of the time within our world that we work in, we are heavily critical straight away.
Whether that feedback comes with live theatre, it's there the second
And you
it
do it to
happens
yourself.
on stage.
And you do it to yourself. And, you can't always see the good before the bad.
Yeah.
And I think those moments, like, that's something to really, like, remember and hold on to.
And
to
you've
just
had,
think,
you've
I
had her
love that.
since first year, hadn't you, the student?
Yeah, I taught her all 3
So
years.
I think seeing, for you as well, as like moving from being a senior technician at a receiving house theatre to then moving into the education side of teaching the next generation, if you like, of technicians, to see her doing that, like you say, in her third language, like obviously it's a massive achievement for her, but also for you, like that must have felt incredibly like satisfying, and you must have felt really proud to be like, oh my god, she's doing it. She's doing it.
But I certainly feel that drive from working with good people.
Yeah.
And I'll take a little bit of,
Well, yeah. It was,
there's some credit.
Smidge of credit.
She's done a lot of that work herself, and she is good, and I'm
Yeah.
working with good people, and that makes me interested in doing more work with more good people.
and that's such a good point. I think, again, in the arts, I think you can have a heap of talent, but if you don't care,
It's passion. Passion's the
you've
main
got to have
driver.
the passion, and I think a healthy balance of talent and passion,
Yeah.
you're going to go far and you're going to do amazing. Like, talent can only take you so far.
Yeah.
If you don't give a damn, then, people pick up on that as well. People won't want to work with you. People will, just be a little bit wary.
It comes from like the second half of that as well, when it's like, if you also don't back yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's like people who are really talented, but maybe don't believe that they're talented or don't have maybe the same opportunities. I'm thinking about the fact that most of the A-list British actors are private schooled.
Yeah.
Like private school. And so you sort of think, well, the accessibility for those people, you could be incredibly passionate and incredibly talented, but maybe you are led to believe like, oh well, there's not a place for you.
This isn't something you grow up in.
Yeah.
Why would you?
You can't go and do that. You can't go and do this, and so like they don't back themselves. And I think that's where we're being let down a lot.
100%.
Is that there's this still a stereotype where you can get so far, and then it's, well, you have to be a certain type of person. You have to have a certain amount of money, of support, of whatever to be able to do that.
And it's those roadblocks, isn't it? And those, not just not having that confidence given to you to back yourself, but also not having those doors opened for you. Like you said, if you've got the privately educated, you've got doors that will open for you, and you've got connections, which is great. Like that, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and that there is a lot of still of who you know, because within the arts we're great networkers, we're great communicators, and that just comes part and parcel of it. Whether or not you've got to do that yourself, or you get a little leg up with that, but I think it's definitely harder for those that don't have any immediate connections.
Of course, I'm not saying that like you can't be successful if
No,
you're not,
no.
but it definitely is one of those things of like you have to have that belief in yourself that I can do this, but you also it's made easier when you've got a little bit of support. You don't have to worry about working a full-time job and trying to fit in auditions around it and trying to do blah 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 blah.
I had 3 jobs at uni. So
brag.
I know. But as in, like, just thinking that, like, oh, I wish I didn't have to have 3 jobs at uni, because I'd have been able to help out with other people's projects more. I'd have been a bit more immersed within the world that I was training in, whereas I actually had to really immerse myself when I was in it, but then just forget it and work so that I, to live and live that. So I think, absolutely. I think it's really, it's difficult, isn't it? I've lost my train of thought.
We were talking
your spark.
Your spark.
My spark.
Let's go back to the spark. I love that we got deep though. That will happen. I feel like with us talking. Yes.
So Tom and I actually went to go and see a show together. My in-laws, his parents, bought us a Christmas present to go and see Operation Mincemeat. And listeners, if you haven't watched Operation Mincemeat, you need to go and see it. It's absolutely brilliant. But one of the reasons I love it so much, so one of the things I teach with my kids is we look at the 39 steps.
Yeah.
And the 39 steps is amazing, and they are doing a new short, there's a short run of it at the moment. I think it's running until the middle of September, something like that. But they haven't done a tour of the 39 steps in a really long time. And so I was always a bit like, oh, I love to be able to go and show kids what they're studying. It helps contextualise it for them, having that modelling. And I was like, if we can't take them to go see the 39 steps, we need to take them to see Operation Mincemeat, because it's a small cast. Is it 5 or 6?
5?
Yeah, cast of 5, and the amount of non-naturalistic techniques that they're using in this musical is phenomenal. It's a comedy musical, but about a real-life Second World War operation that MI5 or
Secret Service.
Secret Service. Yeah, Secret Service ran. And so it was a very serious topic, but they make it so funny and so engaging. They bring it to life. And one of the things for me, and I'd never seen this before, and I think this is why it stuck with me, but one of the characters is this actor who was playing this role. He was about 6'3", quite a broad guy, and he starts playing. He multi-roles throughout, as they all do, but he plays a character of a woman who's probably in her mid to late 40s, 50s, who's a little bit prim and proper and has, you know, little glasses with a little pearl chain holding them on and everything, and sings in character as this woman about like a lost love, like he's writing a letter to make this particular context, this scene believable. And when he finished this song, I was crying, but he had about 30 seconds, nearly 30, well, maybe not 30 seconds, but about 20 seconds of silence when he finished, like, and all you could hear was the sound of people crying. And I had men next to me, I could see guys in front of me. Everybody had been so moved by this man's performance.
That shared emotion.
And it wasn't just, you know, initially it was a little bit sort of, oh goodness, he's, you know, this big guy's multi-rolling as a woman. He wasn't in a dress or anything. It wasn't drag.
It was the physicality.
But it was just the sincerity that he brought to this role. It stuck with me so much. And it's the most beautiful song. If anybody wants to listen to it, excuse me, it's Operation Mincemeat soundtrack, Dear Bill. So
thank you.
Listen to Dear Bill.
We love that. We love that.
But yeah, it was just absolutely beautiful. And that, for me, I was sent a message to my department afterwards being like, we have to bring the kids to see this. Like, this is everything we want them to do.
That will change things for them.
Yeah, and with the GCSE the GCSE devising like unit that we do with them for their GCSE, they have to use loads and loads of non-naturalistic techniques. So things like freeze frame.
You've got to see that
to see it done to that level would just, I feel like, would open the minds. Of, I think, because that's what we take for granted a lot of the time when people don't necessarily understand the arts, is that we're like, oh, but, and actually what we don't even realise we're doing is that we're pulling on things that we have seen.
Always.
We're remembering things, even if we're not forming that like an image in our mind, we're remembering a time where we were moved by theatre or where we saw something really, and it can kind of all blend together, and it forms our experience, our foundation, our understanding. And children don't have that. No. Students don't have that. And so everyone goes, oh, well, young people, they don't care. And you go,
well, they don't care. They don't know. It's the access, it's the opportunities, it's those doors opening.
Exactly.
And even you saying that, like, it's so important because it just sparked in me something that I saw when I was in, I think it wasn't GCSE, it was sixth form, but it was Matthew Bourne. It was Dorian Gray, so one of his more unknown pieces. It was in a really small venue. I think it was the Wickham Swan. And he did a Q&A beforehand in like the Stalls bar, like with us, just like really natural, just chatting to us. And I just remember seeing that piece and thinking, like, you know, he used multimedia, the dancers had a live feed, had a camera, they were filming the dance and it was being projected, and it opened up my mind. And it really, again, everything that my drama teacher was telling me that we needed to be doing, I think we were doing a module on dance theatre, so it was perfect. Like, I was like, I don't know what dance theatre is. I've not really, I've done jazz hand musical theatre for most of my life up until sixth form, and her getting us to see that and having that conversation with Matthew Bourne, and again seeing that piece that he hasn't really done since. It's not you know, one of his bigger pieces like Edward Scissorhands and Swan Lake that goes on tour and comes back. So I think what you said there is super important. Actually, as a teacher, I guess you feel a bit of a responsibility
100%.
to give those opportunities and bring it to life.
There's no real substitute for experience in a lot of these cases.
No.
And I think it's what I found as one of my biggest challenges when I started working in education, was what I had as experience and knowledge from experience. Translating that into a way that people who didn't have that experience, you know, I can reference something that I've seen, but if they've not seen it, it means very little to them. So how are they going to be able to learn from that? So I think still going to see shows, being able to, in my case with working with backstage students, we'd ask local touring shows if we could come and help with their fit up, because that's something that nobody sees apart from if you're working on that show.
Absolutely.
And so getting students in to go, oh, this is what those big doors on the side of the theatre are for.
Like,
oh, that's where the shows come in, and that's how they fit.
This is how the magic happens. And again, I think that's important. Like what you were just saying, in work, I always say I don't see enough stuff. I output a lot of stuff, but I don't see enough. and I'm always keeping myself accountable for that, or I'm delivering workshops but I'm not attending, I'm not learning enough, and that's when we become stagnant in our practice. And I'm always kind of, you know, telling myself, like, Becca, you must see more, just because, again, that reignites that spark, that helps and brings it. And really interesting as well what you were saying, Tom, about seeing how the other parts of theatre work. So I used to work in-house at a large scale receiving theatre, and I worked in creative learning, and I was like, I want to see the other pieces of the departments and the other pieces of this massive 2,500 seater theatre, and like, what makes it work. I'm doing, you know, I'm getting people in, I'm doing activity with them, but I want us all to be like work experience for a day. And so I did a little rota and, like, you know, brought it to the team meeting, and people were on board, and everyone tried every department for a day across, like, a kind of a term, you know, like within autumn we did it, I think. And I did a get in for Blood Brothers.
Amazing.
Had my little hard hat, had my steel toe cap
Building
boots
the streets of Liverpool,
that were literally like 2 sizes too big for me, because they were just like the men's shoes. And I had like thick ski socks from my husband on, just like, you know, just flapping around like in them. And I did. I literally, funny you say that, I built the streets of Liverpool. I was trusted, I know, with a power tool, and I even said, guys, do you know, is this okay? Like, I'm gonna, just do it, Becca. I was like, okay, and I loved it, and it was just that physical labour. And again, you know, I've performed on stage, I've directed, I've workshopped, but I've never done the get-in. I'd seen it, but I'd never done it, and that was really, I loved that. And
did
now,
you rev yourself back on for the get-out?
No, someone else did the get-out. Yeah, I have since now done get-ins and get-outs, and get-outs are just like, shove everything in the van and let's get home. It's a little bit more hapdash, isn't it?
It's the fact that that's the late night into the early morning.
And you're just like, you just want to get it done. But I remember that, like, even like the guys from finance were then coming and doing a workshop with me, and it was
really nice.
Just again just reigniting, I think, everyone's spark for the industry that we all work in, but it
and
can
I think,
just
like,
become a job.
sharing that, like, respect as well for other departments, and being like, oh, okay, like, actually, when you say you need time, or when you say you need this or need that, you're asking because you know, like, and it creates that empathy.
Absolutely.
And having empathy, I think, is empathy for what other people do, for empathy for what people have experience with, recognising and understanding people's points of view and perspectives, and how that's different is the most important thing. And like, just, it's made me think of something where you were saying, like, there's no substitute for experience. I absolutely agree with that. Like, I mean, you were saying, I have to think of ways to communicate this when they don't have the experience, they don't understand what and I have to do that all the time, but it makes me feel old constantly. Like, I'll be like to kids, I'm like, oh, because you've seen, and they're like, no, and I'm like,
that?
I'm like, oh my god, guys,
and then you're like getting up on YouTube, and you're like, please watch this.
I'm like, honestly, TikTok is my most important teaching resource. It's how I stay relevant.
There are other platforms available.
It's how I stay relevant to the youth. But honestly, like, recognising, particularly for me, like, the fact that I always say this to other people, and I say this to myself all the time. I'm like, students' that I teach, ages 11 to 16, their brains aren't fully developed. Like, their brains aren't fully made yet.
You have to remember, and remind yourself of that.
So it's like, if they're acting out in a certain way, it's like, well, they have a reason for it, and even if they don't know what the reason is, they just have a big feeling, and so it's
that's
like,
how it's come out.
Exactly. So, like, having that empathy with them and trying to relate something back to them is the way to connect with people. And I think that is, when you look at quote unquote successful theatre, media, anything in the arts, all the thing that the common thread in all of them is that people can relate it back to themselves. They can relate it back to something that they have experienced, something that they have seen, something that their parent has gone through, their grandparent, their whatever, their favourite book character. Something that makes people care about it, that makes people go, oh, that's just like, immediately people care about it. And even if it's just, I wish I could do that, like being in Star Wars or something, or a skill, exactly, that empathy is what, you know, sparking empathy within people. I think that's what makes art successful.
And actually, like, bringing that to you and, you know, your career, like, that must, as a drama teacher, that must be quite difficult to get that out of your students sometimes and explain that without them just being like, oh, miss, that's boring, or like, you know what I mean, making that accessible rather than...
I think for me, what I try to do is I preempt that. So my very first lesson that I teach at the start of the year is I take 15 minutes out of our hour together to be like, well, why are you studying drama?
Nice.
Like, why do you have to do drama? And being like, this is what drama is. And the amount of times I'm always like, I'm not here to teach you to become the next Oscar winner. It'd be great, and I would like to be accredited in your speech. But I was like, I'm here, like, you're in this classroom to learn to work together. You're in this classroom because this is not a quote unquote traditional learning environment.
Yeah.
You are not sat behind desks. There is not a task for you to do that you have to write this down and copy this and turn to each other and test each other and blah blah blah.
But you've got to give a lot of yourself.
You have to
in different ways.
Yeah, and you will have to trust each other, and it's like building peer relationships, learning to work with other people, even if they're people that aren't your bestest friend, your bestest pal.
Yeah.
Actually having to be like, engage with them and support other people and learn what that feels like to have people support you that maybe you don't know, and support others and recognise other people's perspectives. Like, one of the units we do is called Hope Springs, so based on the play Hope Springs. But I've sort of changed it slightly, and I do a lot more emphasis on what it's actually about. So it's about the troubled teen industry.
Yeah.
And there's a lot happening about that in the moment. A lot of people talking about that in discussions, like Paris Hilton coming out and saying how she was a victim.
Mistreated.
Exactly. And kids, and the amount of the quality of their performance goes up so much when they care. And all I'm saying is, I'm like, like, these are kids your age.
Yeah.
Like, they're your age.
And
imagine this happened to you. Imagine you found out and they're like,
oh god, yeah.
And then they ask questions.
Yes.
And then you're
and
like,
it becomes a debate and a discussion.
Yeah.
And you start to devise together.
That's how you trigger that empathy.
Yeah.
Because you ask them, how do you feel about that?
Definitely.
How would you feel about this? What if this was you? What if this was your friend? What if this was your mum?
And again,
and then they're like, whoa.
And also lived experience, isn't it? It's like, think about something that is maybe not on that scale, but is there something similar that you've lived through? You know, it's that classic saying, write what you know.
Yeah.
I know it's said all the time, but I always come back to it and think that is important, isn't it? Like, if you're not writing about something that means something to you, or you care about, or you can feel or empathise with,
other people aren't going to
connect to that. And Tom, that must be like the same with you. Like, obviously you, within the theatre tech world, you also teach.
Yes.
As well, so you must have to find tools to make that engaging. And maybe, do you sometimes find yourself maybe kind of teaching people that don't really know why they're doing theatre tech?
I think it's difficult because in higher education there's often a little bit more drive, and you do get a lot of people who come from, I think, what's the assumed failed performer background.
Sorry.
Should we sort it out?
We've just got Tash trying to move her mic back up.
I'm really sorry. I was trying to be subtle and it did not work.
It's becoming a performance within the podcast.
Subtle is not my forte.
Is this a technical teaching moment for me?
Well, and as Tom talks about tech,
he assists
with the microphone.
I'm really sorry.
It's okay.
Back to you, Tom.
But yeah, so you I think there's always that perception that comes from can't perform, failed performer, so they fall into that backstage world.
Yeah.
And I think so often, you know, as was the case for me, being on stage is the first experience that anybody gets of the arts.
Oh gosh,
it's often what we put forward to people. And so they can really, really love working backstage, or the idea of any technical stage management work, have that desire, but they just don't quite know enough of everything
how
that
they
entails.
fit in.
Yeah. And how the industry is going to affect them, and they will affect the industry as well. And so it was interesting that you had that sort of first 15 minutes of your classes and you talk about that and why. I ended up in a recent year putting in a module where it was contemporary issues within theatre. And the very loose brief from myself was, I want students that have studied, and they study these really detailed theory and the actual practical knowledge to do what the individual skills they need to carry out, whether it's lighting, sound, stage management, calling shows. But the point of this was that they can sit in the bar after a show with a director, with a colleague, and they understand how the industry, as sort of a really large ecosystem, is working. We're recording this towards the end of August. Obviously, Ed Fringe is just coming to a close, and there's been lots of talk about the sustainability of that for performers, for the actual festival. And I think, again, no substitute for experience, in my opinion. But if they aren't aware of what the Edinburgh Fringe is like, before they might get someone who goes, hey, can you...
like being thrown to the lions.
Yeah, exactly. But it's something that a lot of young backstage workers will...
just go.
Yeah. Someone will go, you've got to... Yeah, we'll put you up in digs, like, it's fine. And before you know it, they're actually walking 4 miles out of the city every night, because that's where the digs are, on their own.
Yeah, feeling quite lost and scared, but having to just get on with it. Which is actually quite a lot of the arts.
It is terrifyingly too much so.
You do
or
just
they'll be offered like a profit share show. And they'll have no idea what that is and go, well, the show makes money, I make money, brilliant. And then...
And, coming on to that point of, it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, to talk about all of the parts of the arts. And like what you said something earlier, that actually until you get to higher education, if you get to or decide to go to higher education, it's not spoken about. And I learned so much at university because beforehand I was like, sorry, what? I've got to, what? I thought I just wanted to make a theatre company.
Yeah.
Why do I need to know about tax and all of this stuff? And
surely the government would just let me do this for the love of it.
Literally, and I think we a lot of us do come into things with rose-tinted glasses because we're in the arts. We do it for the passion, we do it for the love, we do it for the art, the craft, and we're not always rationally thinking, and especially when you're young and you're just kind of enamoured by it.
And it feels like you've got no responsibilities, that the world is open in front of you, and it can get you you get caught up in different things, or it's very easy to get distracted or to, maybe make choices that you don't fully understand because you've not been told about it.
Yeah.
But it's not just... I think it's not just young and new. 10 years into this, I remember being told, we don't do overtime, you do it for the love of it.
Yeah.
And I'm
if you're freelance...
4 o'clock in the morning...
Yeah, if you're freelance, you work until you get the job done.
Yeah.
It does, your fee is your fee.
You actually have that as teachers as well.
Yeah.
Yes. We do it you do it for the students. You do it for the students. It's like I do it for the students, but I also do need money to live
I
as
get
well.
That as well with this, you don't do what you do for the money, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't. But it would be really nice if we got paid what we should.
Yeah.
I think it's become too normalised in the industry to say, well, you don't work in theatre or you don't work within the arts for the money, do you? You do it because you love it. And I think on one hand, you couldn't do it if you didn't love it. You couldn't, because you would have that, this is a job and I am not earning what I deserve and what I should be, and I'm being asked to work every hour kind of under the sun, or I'm not even being asked, I'm just doing it because I care. And I think you cannot be in this industry if you don't care. But I think there is an absolute warped sense of what the reality is for a worker within the arts industry.
It's almost like that it hasn't kind of caught up with other sort of worker expectations. Like an office worker is like, well, I will start at this time, I will finish at this time. If I have to work over, I will get paid overtime, or I will get toil. I get this, or I get that. And then when it's like you're in the theatre or you're in arts or anything else, it's a bit like, oh, well, that's fine because we'll just hire somebody else. And it's this tricky thing, and I think that's why unions are so important.
Oh gosh,
and it's I hear it a lot.
Shout out equity.
Yeah, we love you, equity.
Yeah.
When I have parents of students in my classes, and I talk to them, and they're like, oh well, what's the value of a drama GCSE? And I'm like, well, what does your child want to do? And they're like, oh, they want to be a lawyer. And I'm like, cool, well, what are their other GCSEs? And they're like, oh, triple science. They're like, triple science, maths, photography, something and something. And I'm like, okay, so nothing where you actually need to talk to another person.
So actually, this is super important because they're a lawyer. They're going to be in there talking to a room full of people.
And as part of my teacher training, I went to...
public speaking.
Yeah, exactly. I went to SEN schools, and I went to local college as well. And I went to this local college, and we had kids there wanting to do, they had to do an additional LAMDA qualification because they hadn't liked drama at school, or they hadn't wanted to do drama at school. They were shy, they were this, they were that. and they've never had a part-time job. They've never had it, and now they were about to leave college. They're in their second year of college, about to leave, and they needed to do this Lambda because they were like, well, I need to go do an interview because I'm trying to get into Cambridge to be a doctor, but I'm too terrible. And then they stand there and they're like, and just stiff as a board, looking down, mumbling.
I love this. Tasha literally.
I'm in character.
Stiff as a board.
So well for any audio only listeners.
That's why I'm describing. We've got Tash looking like a wooden board in the studio.
Guys, I'm method. I don't know what I want you to say. Like, it's just how I am.
You can tell she's trained.
No, I'm a trained actor. But having that, and they are so terrified, and you're like, actually, if you'd have had a bit more of a foundation, if you'd have had the sting taken out of this, if you'd have learnt to care about this, if you'd have learnt to respect the people that were trying to teach you this, if you'd have had some, and I think that's, to me, that is a lot of what it is. It's actually a lack of respect for people
100%.
within arts and theatre.
And that brings me on to my next question, because I think that lack of respect sometimes is also transferred over to our nearest and dearest sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Not always knowingly, or maliciously, I will say. But I've got this question for you guys. Obviously, within the arts, we don't just do one job. No. We wear many hats.
Oh, yeah.
We do many in between, maybe filler jobs as well. And a lot of the time I have people saying that they don't know what I do. And it's quite easy to just say they don't know what I do. So I'd love kind of us to finish today by asking you guys, how do your nearest and dearest describe what each of you does? Are you a bit of a Chandler Bing of the family?
That's for the 90s listeners.
Yeah, that is. That's for the 90s listeners. No one knows what he does.
Well, I'm a secondary school drama teacher, so like that's not super complex for my family.
You do other things.
I do other things, but that's my family just say. They're just like, oh, she's a secondary school drama teacher.
So they don't.
They tend to forget. My poor grandmother, bless her, she's in her 80s, but she will always ask me. She does remember that I have another job.
Yeah.
But she will be like, and you were at 876, 854,
and
I'm
everyone
like,
always
8
gets
7 8.
Everyone always gets the date.
Yeah. I'm like,
not
it's
just numbers.
The same two numbers twice. It's just, you just need to remember two numbers, 8, 7, and 8, and in that order. So she always forgets, and they are supportive. Like, they have come to see and experience it.
It's supportive, isn't it? But it's a little bit, and I think, for context as well, 878 AD is an immersive
Hampshire Cultural Trust immersive museum experience.
Ubisoft that me and Tash met at, and we're both performers in currently.
Come see us at the Brooks Centre in Winchester. Shameless plug.
Now I'm going to get a sponsorship from HCT. Tash gave you a free shout out. And it's I think it's quite easy. I do have a lot of people saying, well, I don't really know what you do. And I'm like, do you want to try and learn? Do you want to know? So Tom, how do people describe what you do?
My parents will often say I do lights.
Oh yeah,
that's what I do.
Just lights.
Yeah, just lights.
You're the light man.
The light man. It was sort of the first thing that I got professional jobs in, was operating lighting for shows, which is pretty straightforward as a job. You just go and you press the go button when a lovely person on the other end of your cans tells you to.
Yeah.
Fine. Oh, and your family also, they just seem to think that because Tom is a technician, that he can fix anything.
So you're a fixer.
We'll go around and they're like, the Hoover's broken, and Tom's like, I don't know.
I think you're an engineer.
Yeah. It was my first Christmas home from uni, where I'd done 2 months worth of my degree, and it was the old Hoover, because they've since got another one that has since broken as well. But it was, the Hoover's broken, can you fix it? And I no idea. But I think the biggest challenge for my family was working out that it's not a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
My mum, bless her, would try to call me at 8 o'clock at most evenings, and I'd have to turn her down and be, I'm in a show.
Yeah.
And then over Christmas period, it'd be, why are you going? It's a Boxing Day's a bank holiday.
I know, they don't. Yeah, people don't understand.
Happens, everybody goes.
And the thing is, they're theatre goers.
Yeah,
they are theatre goers. And for them, it was that idea of, oh well, but why are you doing it? Yeah. You're like, well, who else is? It's my job. Who else is going to do it?
It's the exposure, isn't it? Of actually, again, not enough people knowing about the different parts of the arts. Like, why this podcast is called what it's called. And I'm just going to end here by saying, like, you two are a couple.
We are.
You are quite recently married. I went to the wedding. It was lovely.
11 months.
I know.
Wonderfully produced.
It was. It was. It really was.
Tom fully went, I'm treating this like it's a production. Yeah. I was like, amazing. I'm the star star.
Everything ran very smoothly. You
did very
produced,
well.
you starred, you directed, and the speeches and vows were also beautifully written and
thank
spoken. But what made me say that is, does it make it a bit easier working in the industry, having a partner that also works within it and gets it? Does that make you feel like you're like more supported within your relationship? Does it just make you feel a bit more seen within it all?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I
know what you say.
Classic marriage.
First.
No, I definitely feel that because you understand much more about what goes on to make a show, that if I'm turning around going, this is running long, or, Panto Prep's going to be an 80-hour week, whatever, you understand it's not just...
You can't just pick it up and drop it.
Yeah.
And I can't just go, if I take a few hours off this week, I'll add them on next week. It doesn't work like that. The show will have happened.
Yeah.
It needs to be done at these moments in these times.
So it's like already having that understanding and not feeling like you've got to explain yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I absolutely agree. And I think also it's really useful having, because my experience is on stage or directing or anything else. Like, I don't have any real experience at all with doing backstage stuff other than maybe like a bit of costume. So it's really helpful for me when wanting to produce shows or do anything that I have this person that I can ask questions.
You've got both of the parts.
Yeah, exactly. That together we are a theatre company.
Which
We've never worked together though.
No, we haven't.
Until now.
Until now.
Technically.
Until now.
Technically, this podcast is
Yeah.
the first time you've collaborated on something.
How exciting.
I didn't even do the lights.
Actually, no. You tell a lie, because we actually met. We actually met when Tom was working on a show and I was performing.
Tom is looking very blank right
Yes.
now, which
Well,
I'm worried
yeah,
for your
you'd
safety.
already- You won an award.
I'd
You
won an
came back
award.
to
I
the theatre
won
that I
Best
was
Actress.
This is why she wants to put this in there. Yeah, I
Shameless
love that.
plug for myself.
Shameless plug. Well,
Once again, I'm performing at 878.
with me. And Tom will let you turn the lights off
Yeah, thank you.
after this, and you can even wrap some wires up.
I think there's a broken Hoover out there. You can have a go on as well.
But I just want to say thank you so much.
No,
for
thank you so much for having us.
coming on the pod. It's been
so fun.
Lovely having a couple, a bit of a kind of arts power couple.
Oh yeah,
Gross.
Yeah.
Don't know why I said that, but but you are, and you're brilliant, both brilliant at what you do. I'm so lucky that I get to work alongside you, but also you're my friends. And that's what the arts is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We meet friends for life. My husband has told me I need to stop making friends. But any listeners, I will tell you, if you work in this industry, you will never stop making friends, and that's just a
I
beautiful
thought that
thing.
you were going to say, I'll find you and I'll make friends with you.
Very threatening.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Becca.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Parts of the Arts with me, Rebecca Godden. I'm going to pop the details of Tom and Tasha below in the information. Follow them on socials, go onto their websites, shout about the work that we all do, and just keep sharing that love. Thank you.